So I'm still surprised how many people don't know that YouTube has a bunch of free movies that you can watch, and they're not bootlegs or illegally uploaded. No, these are put out by YouTube, and it's a rotating list with new movies getting added every single month. And in this video, we're gonna be talking about 10 hidden gem movies that I think a lot of people have overlooked. We've got a zombie movie on this list, a movie about the Cuban Missile Crisis, a fantasy movie directed by Michael Mann, an action rom-com, a really bizarre Western, and a lot more.
Let's have it.
My bottom pick on this list is that Cuban Missile Crisis flick. It's titled 13 Days. Kevin Costner stars in this as Kenny O'Donnell, and he's kind of the lead character for this particular movie. And I'll say the movie is a fantastic way to learn about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I would say, though, if you're a history buff and you already know a lot about it, this movie is flawed. In fact, it's not really at the level or production value that a historical event like this tends to have. If anything, it feels a little bit closer to like a Netflix original movie, not necessarily in a bad way. Yet, if you enjoy political dramas, if you were a fan of The West Wing or anything in that genre, 13 Days is an excellent flick. It's just not one of those movies that I recommend for everyone watching.
You were lucky, Skipper.
Damn sparrows. Must have been migrating.
Next on this list, we've got a highly underrated Samuel L. Jackson thriller that also stars Eva Mendes and Ed Harris in Cleaner.
What most people don't know is that when someone dies in your house, it's up to you to clean up the mess. That's where I come in.
Early in the flick, he takes on a job that is basically to clean up a crime scene, so he's unwittingly an accessory to murder and then gets kind of sucked into this thriller plot. Now, there are so many amazing Samuel L. Jackson performances. This is not one of them, but if you like low-budget thrillers like I do, then The Cleaner's an excellent one. Just don't go in expecting full-throttle Jackson. My number 8 pick on this list has kind of mass appeal, especially for a zombie flick, a genre that's just well worn out at this point, yet The Girl with All the Gifts has a lot of new ideas to offer. Now, this is based on a book by the same name. My wife actually read it, and she enjoyed both the book and the movie. This flick takes place in a future not long after some sort of zombie apocalypse, and the opening scenes in this movie take place in a facility where children are restrained in kind of a disturbing fashion until you see what they're capable of. So the setup here is that you've got these children basically on the verge of becoming ravenous zombies, yet they're still educated in a school, and they're essentially trying to keep them alive until they can find a cure. So that's the setup, and then, not surprisingly, things don't go well. Now, as far as zombie movies go, this one does not have a lot of action in it. In fact, it's got a bit of a slow start, but there are some fantastic sequences in this. And I'll say, fans of The Last of Us should really enjoy this. This would make a nice companion to that show. And I have just largely not been enjoying season 2. I've actually kind of given up on the show. If you're in that camp, The Girl with All the Gifts could actually make up for it. Legendary director Michael Mann, he's known for Heat and some of the best crime movies ever created, also Last of the Mohicans, but his first film is titled The Keep, and it's actually a dark fantasy movie. And as a fan of Michael Mann, I'll admit this is not one of his best movies. In fact, it doesn't even really feel like him, except for maybe some of the music choices. But in The Keep, you actually follow a bunch of Nazis that accidentally awaken some sort of dark force in this keep, this castle or fortress. In the movie, they actually need the help of a Jewish historian to help battle this like ancient demon that they've awakened. But the movie overall has this really slick 1980s aesthetic with, you know, fog machines and synth music and all of that cool stuff. And then some practical effects and costumes that look incredible at times and then not so incredible other times. It's kind of a bizarre movie that I do recommend for just absolute movie lovers. Like if you're a fan of Michael Mann, it's one of those movies like you need to see what he did first. It's very flawed. You can see where he's making a lot of missteps, but ultimately This movie was one of the steps on his path to becoming one of the best directors of all time. Speaking of crime movies, my next pick on this list is one from legendary director John Singleton, who's most famous for Boys in the Hood. But in 2005, he did a movie with Mark Wahlberg that I think went criminally underrated. It's titled Four Brothers. While Mark Wahlberg is the lead, this also stars Tyrese Gibson, Andre 3000, Terrence Howard, Sofia Vergara, Taraji P. Henson, and Chiwetel Ejiofor is an incredible bad guy in this movie. He's fantastic. And obviously the four brothers in this movie don't look related at all. They were actually adopted by a woman who is murdered, and then they go after the people who did it. It's a very basic setup, kind of a cops and robbers type movie. Not nearly as culturally significant as something like Boys in the Hood, but still an excellent crime flick that's maybe a bit Hollywood, maybe a bit more Hollywood than a lot of his other work, but still makes it pretty fun. Now coming up, we've still got that bizarre western, we've got the action rom-com, and then we've got a couple of the best maritime movies I think I've ever seen. Before that, I want to talk to the dog lovers watching because today's sponsor, Sundays, helped extend the life of our dog, Peanut. As she got older, Peanut suddenly stopped digesting her food and she was shedding weight very quickly, which is fatal for a dog at her size. And it was food that we thought was good food. It was not cheap. And we experimented with different fresh dog food brands, but when I heard about Sundays, we switched her to that, and not only did she eat it and digest it, but she started putting weight back on immediately. And that's because Sundays is air-dried dog food that contains 90% human-grade meat, meaning meat that is safe for you and I to eat. The other 10% is just vegetables with no synthetic ingredients. So not only can you give your dog better nutrition than typical pet store food, but Sundays delivers it directly to your door, so there's no need to shop, and they cost up to 40% less than other fresh dog food brands, and that's because it's air dried. They don't have to spend money on refrigeration or ice packs to get it to you. They're just focused on a short list of premium ingredients, and they pass the savings on to you. Not only that, but my viewers can save an additional 50% off on top of that already great price when you use my link in the video description, or just go to sundaysfordogs.com/flick. Again, that's 50% off on top of an already great price on food that's gonna give your dog better nutrition. I highly recommend it, but speaking of my recommendations, let's get back to the movies.
Was I cheating on you? Maybe.
Longtime subscribers know I don't recommend a lot of romantic comedies here. I don't necessarily hate the genre, I just find them to be very repetitive, but when I find a unique one, I love recommending it, and that's what we've got here with Mr. Right. Whether you're a fan of Anna Kendrick or not, she's fantastic in this movie, and yes, she plays the lead, but she bumps into a man, quite literally, who ends up being an assassin. He's played by Sam Rockwell, who is just one of my all-time favorite actors, and they're both a lot of fun together in this movie. So right off the bat, you have a setup that's very different than any other rom-com. Yes, there is some action in it. It feels a little cartoonish and fun. It keeps it light, but it's funny. Like, he really likes her, and he's in this predicament of trying to hide that he's an assassin. Tim Roth plays a cop that's hunting him down. He honestly feels a little bit out of place in this movie, but I love Tim Roth, so it is cool to see him in the flick. Mr. Right is also great because it satisfies two different cravings. It's a fantastic romantic comedy, but it's also an action movie, making it just a fantastic date night pick. Now, if you do watch it on YouTube and you don't have YouTube Premium, it's gonna have commercials, but for a date night movie, it's not a bad thing to have a little, short break every now and then.
Is this my dad?
Just unconscious.
Now, we're finally at that bizarre western. A bizarre western that's not gonna feel really strange at all until you get to the final act in Seraphim Falls.
Mister, who the hell is this man? Must be part Indian or wolf.
In this movie, Pierce Brosnan, yes, Pierce Brosnan, not Guy Pearce, is on the run through the forest at the very start of the movie, to the point that you don't really know who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. In fact, you really won't find that out for quite a while in this flick. So Seraphim Falls wastes no time getting started. I mean, the action is underway on almost the very first shot of this flick. And it works because you've seen people on the run in westerns before. You kind of know something happened, and finding out exactly what happened is the story here with Seraphim Falls. I'll say they also cover a lot of ground in this movie. You start off in the snow, you end up in the desert, and you travel everywhere in between. But Seraphim Falls ultimately goes to a really unique place that no other westerns ever go to, and I found it to be not only interesting, but very memorable for a western movie like this, especially one that's been largely overlooked. Again, longtime subscribers know I'm a big fan of like 80s and 90s action movies, and one of my favorites when I was a teenager was actually Daylight, starring Sylvester Stallone. Now, while I think this movie still holds up, it's loaded with practical effects and big stunt pieces, and most of what you're seeing on camera is real. It's using miniatures and all sorts of just classic movie-making magic, but it's actually kind of a remake of the Poseidon Adventure. It's a disaster movie where a relatively small group of people survive a New York City tunnel collapse. It actually collapses on both ends, and they become trapped in the tunnel. Stallone is then sent in through like air ducts to help get people out. The reason I feel like it's a lot like the Poseidon Adventure is they're constantly dealing with rising water and trying to navigate their way through this tunnel system before they drown. So it has a very similar feel, but a harder 1990s edge. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Like 90s movies, they have a harder edge than even movies today do. And it's kind of a PG-13 crowd pleaser at the same time, but if you love anything I've described here, especially like the big stunt pieces and practical effects, then Daylight is a total gem. But my next two picks are also loaded with action in a very different way. My next one being Rush, directed by Ron Howard.
Welcome to the racing grudge match of the decade.
This is the story of the rivalry between two F1 racers with James Hunt and Niki Lauda. Having just recently rewatched Ford vs. Ferrari over on Prime Video, I loved it. I'd forgotten how good that movie was. I think it's every bit as good as Rush, and I'll say Rush I don't think got quite the love that that movie did. Also, we've got F1 coming out this summer with Brad Pitt, making it a great time to revisit Rush. It does deal with a lot of off-the-track drama, but it's Ron Howard. All of that stuff is expertly directed and it keeps you glued to the movie, but I gotta say, the racing sequences and all the drama building up to them in this movie really takes the cake. It's incredible stuff, and it's all shot just beautifully, and it's got an R-rated edge to it. Typically movies like this come in at like family-friendly. This one is not, making it feel more genuine. Now, there are a bunch of great movies that take place at sea. In fact, there are very few bad ones that take place at sea, mainly because it's a lot of work to pull off a movie like that. So my number one pick is one of the most underrated, but also one of the best. Before my number one pick, though, I want to tell you how to find these movies. It's very easy. On YouTube, type in primetime movies. I know that's not an obvious thing to do, but when you go there, there's going to be a bunch of movies, including ones that are available for rent. I know hardly anyone probably rents movies on YouTube, but the free movie section is where it's at. You'll find it. They move it around a little bit. Just find it, click view all, and there you go. You've got the full list. The top of this page is typically loaded with some really fantastic flicks, but if you dig, you're going to find some great stuff like the movies I've recommended here. Now, before my number one pick, which I'll go ahead and tell you, it's Master and Commander Far Side of the World. I also wanted to mention U-571, another fantastic movie that's every bit as good as Master and Commander, but it's a bit more well-known and didn't quite fit on a list of hidden gem movies. But still, I will say, if you have not seen this movie in a while, Not only is it a fantastic submarine movie, but it is really exciting and thrilling. The plot is pretty incredible and just has like an edge of your seat feel from sequence to sequence all the way through the movie. It really is top-notch stuff. Deserves a #1 spot on the list. Just, you know, not one of underrated movies. But moving on to Master and Commander. This stars Russell Crowe. This movie was largely overlooked back when it came out and still is to this day. But my goodness, if you're not into this movie in the first 6 minutes, seriously, like after the opening credits, maybe it's not for you. The movie starts off with a bang and just really doesn't quit. Now, it is fairly long, it does drag at points, but it's all interesting and fairly historically accurate, even though it is a work of fiction. The way they run operations on the ship and the way it's all filmed and the proportions of the ship, all of that stuff, including the ways that they hunt down and do battle with other ships, all of that stuff, my understanding, is fairly historically accurate. And the movie itself touches on bits of history here and there and delivers a blockbuster level movie that, for the life of me, I don't understand why more people don't love this flick. I think it just comes down to not discovering it, which is why I love recommending stuff like that here. Here's a recap of the list along with other platforms currently hosting these movies. If you're still watching, you might as well click the like button. You obviously liked it enough to keep watching it. And if you want to see my content again in the future, you gotta hit the subscribe button, maybe even hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss out on my recommendations while they're still available on their respective streaming services. But I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this YouTube episode, and you will see me on the next one.